My name is Drake, I'm 38 years old, and I'm a well-known horror novelist. After spending years immersed in the horror genre, I've mastered every trick in the book. I've reached a point where other writers' stories rarely scare me, only my own work still manages to send a chill down my spine. But the higher you climb, the harder it is to find new ground. This year, I've been tortured by one thing, a lack of inspiration. I can't stand sitting at my desk for hours, staring at a blank page, unable to write a single decent line. Writing meaningless words just to keep my name alive, only to make people whisper that I've lost my touch, feels even worse. So I decided it was better to retire while I was still respected. And that's exactly what I did. I announced I was putting down my pen for good. But then, one letter changed everything. Last weekend, my wife went to an art exhibition with her best friend, and I stayed home reading in my study. A mail carrier came to the door with a thick envelope, addressed to me, and requiring my signature. Over the years, I've received countless letters from readers. Most of them express admiration for my books, or for me as a writer. Some, though, come in envelopes like this, bulky ones. Usually, those are from aspiring authors sending me their own horror stories, hoping for feedback. I opened this one casually and read a few lines. It wasn't a story, it was a letter. The handwriting was neat and elegant, clearly written by a woman. After a few more sentences, an odd sense of dread crept over me. So I kept reading. Reader's letter. Dear Mr. Drake. Hello. I'm just an ordinary office worker, but also one of your most devoted readers. Please forgive me for writing to you so suddenly. For a long time, I've quietly supported you like many others. But I've always felt that I'm not like other readers. Now that you're suffering from writer's block and have even announced your retirement, I feel I can't stay silent anymore. I'm writing this long letter with a trembling heart, to tell you something that happened to me, something real. This experience was like a demon that's been sucking the life out of me, and I know it will haunt me forever. You're the only person I can confide in, my favorite writer, Mr. Drake. 10 years ago, we actually met once, back in my hometown, Shimping Town. Do you remember? That was in 1998. I was 18, a senior in high school. Back then, I was shy and quiet, a loner who barely spoke. My only hobby was reading. I had a close friend named Violet. We shared the same interests and often skipped gym class to hide out in the library and read together. During gym class, the library was almost always empty, so we had that peaceful time all to ourselves. Until one day, we saw a stranger there. He was sitting by the window, reading. When he heard us, he looked up. His skin was pale, and he looked tired, but the sunlight softened his face, making him look gentle. He said he was a writer, his name was Drake, and he wrote horror stories. At that time, you were still a newcomer, not yet famous. You told us that you often traveled around, staying in different towns for a few months to find inspiration. You just arrived in Shimping for a 3-month stay and had rented a small 2-story house on the edge of town. You also mentioned you'd asked the local school principal for permission to use the high school library while you were here. Violet and I both loved books, but it was the first time we'd met a real author. We were thrilled. That day, you told us all kinds of fascinating things, and the class period flew by in what felt like minutes. We were two curious small-town girls, and you seemed happy to indulge our curiosity. After that, every time we had gym class, we'd meet you in the library. We'd read together and talk about literature. You told us about your travels and even showed us some of the stories you were working on. Days passed, one after another. Looking back now, those days always feel bathed in sunlight, the sounds of classmates playing outside, and inside, the three of us quietly talking about books. As summer drew closer, the air grew warmer, and so did the feelings in my heart. After a month, I realized, I'd fallen in love with you. You were 10 years older than me, but that didn't matter. What mattered was the connection I felt between our souls. That first rush of love made me lose sleep for nights on end. But no matter how chaotic my emotions were, I never showed it. I was too introverted to let it out. Through that love, I began to see myself more clearly, and also to see Violet differently. She'd been my best friend since childhood. But now, for the first time, I realized she was prettier than me. She was livelier, more confident. During our library meetings, it was always Violet who chatted with you the most. Even when I had something to say, I hesitated to find the right words, and by the time I did, Violet had already said what I was thinking, smoothly, confidently. I mostly just listened and nodded along. We had always been inseparable, walking to school together, eating lunch together, skipping class together, even going to the restroom together. It had always felt natural. But now, I started to feel trapped. I didn't want to share every moment with Violet anymore. I wanted to see you alone. That thought circled in my head for weeks, but I never found a good excuse to act on it. Then came exam season. There was only a month left, and all gym classes were cancelled. We no longer had a reason to meet you at the library, and both Violet and I felt disappointed. You told us to focus on studying for our exams. You said that by the time we finished, your latest novel would also be complete, and you invited us to come over during summer break to read it. For that entire month, that invitation was the only thing keeping me going. Whenever I was buried in textbooks, I kept thinking of you. My longing for you only grew stronger each day. After a month of quietly nurturing my feelings, I finally gathered the courage to do something about it. I promised myself that after exams, I would tell you how I felt. Time flew by, and soon, the exams were over. Violet and I had agreed to visit you the next day together. But I had my own plan. I went a day earlier, alone. I didn't tell her. Your rented house was outside the village, surrounded by woods and a stream. It was peaceful and private, a perfect place for a writer. The front door was open, as was common in small towns, but I still should have called out before entering. I didn't. I was too nervous, too full of thoughts about my confession. I just slipped inside quietly. You weren't on the first floor, so I went upstairs. The second floor was dim. One door was slightly open, with a sliver of light spilling out. Something told me you were in that room, probably reading or writing. I rehearsed what I wanted to say, imagining how you might react. My heart was pounding, my thoughts tangled, but my feet kept moving closer to that half-open door. Those few steps felt strangely long, like time had slowed down. When I finally reached the door, I raised my hand to knock. And then the world went silent. I heard a woman's voice inside. Soft, low, calling your name. Drake. I froze. It felt like lightning struck me. I was only 18, young and naive, but I wasn't stupid. I knew exactly what was happening behind that door. The voice belonged to Violet. While I was still dreaming about soulmates and emotional connection, Violet had already moved past that, into something much more intimate. I stepped back, stunned, shaking my head in disbelief. The half-open door creaked, then quietly clicked shut. I turned around and left, just as silently as I had come. It wasn't until I got home that the anger hit me, anger, and something deeper, uglier, betrayal. Sure, I'd never told Violet about my feelings for you. She hadn't told me about hers, either. On the surface, we owed each other nothing. It was supposed to be a fair competition. But I couldn't stand it, her sneaking off to see you alone. Even though I'd done the same thing, it felt different. I couldn't stand that she had gone so far. How could Violet? How could she be so shameless? And Drake. You looked like such a proper gentleman, an intellectual who always talked about philosophy and literature. How could you, of all people, end up doing something like that? My whole view of the world collapsed that day. I felt the sting of betrayal, both in friendship and in love. I was furious. Deep down, I thought, I have to do something. They can't just get away with this. So I forced myself to stay calm. I pretended nothing had happened and casually let the story slip to the most talkative girl in class. I asked her to please keep it a secret. But of course, secrets are meant to be shared. She didn't say that it came from me, but by the next day, everyone in class knew, and by the day after, the adults did too. Just as I expected, the rumor spread like wildfire. When it reached the two people involved, you, Drake, didn't even try to deny it, you admitted everything. But Violet stopped coming to school. She wouldn't see anyone. You were an outsider, just passing through our little town, and a man, you had nothing to lose. But Violet, she was a local girl, only 18, unmarried, and in a small, conservative place like ours, her reputation was destroyed overnight. Mr. Drake, I know it may sound harsh to bring all this up now, but please believe me, I'm only recounting what happened. I have no other intention. I never told anyone else about this afterward. No one in town ever realized that you, the famous writer Drake, were the man in that story. Let me go on. In the days that followed, Violet's scandal became the talk of the town. Everyone gossiped about it over meals, but I couldn't find any peace. I kept asking myself, had I gone too far? But then I'd remember, she was the one who did that first. So I convinced myself I was justified. Either way, I swore I'd never speak to her again. And that's exactly how things turned out. It was 1998. In a place like our small town, people were old-fashioned, obsessed with a woman's virtue. Violet's family couldn't stand the shame, so one July morning, they packed up and left. A few days later, your 3-month stay ended too. You left town, off to your next stop. I spent a dull, empty summer and then left for college in the city. All those youthful feelings, friendship, love, heartbreak, faded away naturally with that summer. At university, my world grew bigger. I made new friends, met new people, even started dating. From the outside, I looked fine, but deep down, I knew I wasn't. Late at night, I'd still dream of that door. That half-open door in the dark, with a thin strip of light shining through. In my dreams, I'd push it open, and every time, I'd see you and Violet lying together. Or sometimes, it would be my friend and my boyfriend. After that, I could never truly trust anyone again. I doubted every friendship, every relationship. Because of that, nothing ever lasted. Friends drifted away, boyfriends broke up with me. Even when they'd done nothing wrong, I couldn't stop questioning them. Over the years, people came and went, but I always ended up alone. My inner world grew emptier too. I used to love reading, especially novels, and I once loved a writer. But after that heartbreak, even books lost their magic for me. In my 3rd year of college, you began to make a name for yourself as a horror author. My classmates would talk about your stories, some even recommended them to me. But I refused to read them. I ignored every mention of your name. Years passed. I graduated, got a job, and by 2003, I'd almost stopped thinking about the past, until one day, my mother called. She told me to come home for Violet's funeral. Hearing her name after so long, it hit me hard. She was dead. I took leave from work and rushed back to my hometown. The house was full of people. The door was wide open, mourners coming and going. Inside, there was a coffin at the center of the hall. Violet's parents and brother sat beside it. On the wall hung her photo, taken back in high school. Round cheeks, bright smile, eyes curved like crescent moons. For a moment, it felt like time had folded back on itself. I could almost hear her calling my name, asking me to go play. I stared at that photo, unable to believe it. 5 years apart, and now she was gone, just like that. Time had moved on. No one mentioned what happened back then. Faced with the sudden death of such a young girl, everyone just sighed with pity. Violet's mother took my hand, crying. "Violet, look, your best friend came to see you." I walked up to the coffin, numb, not even sure if I should bow or kneel. Her mother told me what had happened. They'd returned to town to clean their old house and stay for a few days. One evening, Violet went for a walk by the river, and never came back. It was flood season, the current was strong. The villagers searched for 3 days before they found her body. By then, she was unrecognizable. Swollen, pale. It was a terrible sight. I listened quietly, feeling as if I were hearing about a stranger. I couldn't connect that image with the lively girl in the photo. All I could do was mutter a few clumsy words of comfort. After leaving Violet's house, I wandered through town. Everything looked the same, the streets, the trees, the river. Every corner carried a memory of her. The path to school. The crossroads where we met. The store we used to stop at after class. Everywhere I went, I could see traces of us. And before I knew it, tears were running down my face. A bright, beautiful girl, now nothing more than a name whispered in pity. When you think about it, nothing in life really matters more than death itself. So many years had passed. Maybe it really was time to let it go. I sincerely wished Violet peace. On my way home, I passed the town's little bookstore and, on impulse, bought your latest novel. Mr. Drake, that was the moment I started reading again. Since then, I've read all your books. I've become one of your most loyal readers. Not long ago, I saw your interview, where you said the pressure had become too much and you planned to retire. I understand that. Truly. Because psychological pressure isn't something you can just let go of by deciding to. After Violet's funeral, I tried to move on. But even years later, I kept having nightmares, of that half-open door, of what was behind it. In my dreams, I'm still standing there, frozen, tormented by something I can't describe. And lately, something strange has been bothering me. I keep remembering the funeral, specifically, the moment we said goodbye to her body. And I can't help but think, something felt wrong. The person lying in that coffin wasn't Violet. Mr. Drake, writing this part makes me uneasy. I've stopped and started many times, hesitating at every line. I'm sorry for sending this before finishing it. But please, when you read this letter, send it back to me. You don't need to reply. I just need to make sure you've read it. After that, I'll send you the next one. That next letter is very important. It will explain everything that happened afterward. Take care. Your devoted reader. December 7th, 2008. 3. The letter ended abruptly. I read it from beginning to end, making sure there was no second page before I finally set it down. Everything the writer described, I did remember some of it. Back then, when I traveled from town to town for inspiration, I did have a brief fling in a small town. The girl was a high school student, but most of the details had long faded from my memory. Thinking carefully, that must have been in 1998, my last stop before I finally settled down. After the turn of the millennium, I decided to stay in this city and devote myself to writing full-time. People and moments from those travels eventually blurred into fragments that became the foundation of my stories. Each time I arrived somewhere new, I came clean, left clean, no attachments, no promises. So whatever happened to the people I met afterward, I truly had no idea. But now, after reading that letter, I couldn't help feeling a strange urgency. I needed to know what happened next. Following the reader's instructions, I immediately mailed the letter back to her. That evening, when my wife returned from the art exhibit, I was still lost in thought. The more I thought about it, the more uneasy I felt, like there was a piece of the story left untold. "The exhibition was lovely today," my wife said, taking off her coat. "Oh," I replied absently. "Who did you go with?" "A friend, the one who gave us that embroidered picture." "Right." She looked at me carefully. "You seem distracted today. Do you need to talk about something?" My wife had always been perceptive. After all, she used to be my therapist. As a horror writer, I've spent years diving too deep into fear itself, and it's left me battling my own mental shadows. My therapist helped me through the worst of it. Over time, our connection deepened into something more, and eventually, we got married. Thanks to her, I've been able to write and live in peace. She could tell something was off, but I didn't want to tell her about the letter, not yet. I wanted to wait until the second one arrived. And then, a week later, it did. Today was Saturday. My wife stayed home, busy in the kitchen. I was in my study, reading as usual, when the mailman finally came. And handed me the second letter. 4. Reader's letter, continued. Dear Mr. Drake. Hello. I was so glad to receive your reply. It showed me that you were at least interested in the story I shared. I've thought long and hard about how to phrase what comes next, but in the end, I decided to just tell it straight. After Violet died in 2003, I thought I could finally let the past go, but reality wouldn't allow it. I kept having nightmares, night after night, about that half-open door. I also dreamt about Violet's funeral. Speaking of the funeral in 2003, I actually noticed something was off even then. The funeral was held 3 days after her body was laid out. It was during the viewing that I saw Violet's body for the first time. Honestly, seeing her, I felt more than shock, I felt unfamiliarity. Even though it had been 5 years, and her body was swollen from water, her features distorted, I had an instinctive feeling that the person in that coffin was not Violet. It may sound bold to think that, but the feeling grew stronger and stronger in my mind. I looked around at the mourners. Everyone was grieving. No one else seemed to suspect anything, only I did. Violet's father read the eulogy from the stage, and my thoughts felt wildly inappropriate in that moment. But I couldn't bring myself to mourn. I lifted my head and looked around. Then, my heart skipped. Somewhere in the crowd, I thought I saw Violet. My pulse raced. I focused, only to realize I had been mistaken. It was a stranger. After the funeral, I hid in the shadows and watched her. She was strikingly similar to Violet, fair skin, long black hair, a round face, slender build, especially a long, graceful neck. She carried herself with elegance. She wasn't from our town. I asked my parents, but they didn't know her either. Suspicion took root in my mind. The body was cremated and buried, the funeral ended, and the crowd dispersed. But I kept following that woman. That night, she drove out of town. I checked her license plate. She was from a big city, not the same city where Violet had gone to college. Back then, not many people had cars. Hers wasn't cheap either. I couldn't understand why a wealthy woman from a distant city would travel so far, just to attend a small-town girl's funeral. It took me half a year to get the answer. After the funeral, I let go of my resentment and returned to enjoying your work, of course purely as a reader. I spent 6 months catching up on all your previous works, including the short stories I had read in high school. Even then, your early writing showed incredible talent. We had a feeling back then that you'd become famous, and indeed, you did. 6 months later, anticipating your new release, I started paying attention to your life again. And then, in a writer's interview, I saw that mysterious woman who had attended the funeral. It turned out she was your wife, and also a psychologist. The connection was hard to ignore. Back in high school, after exams ended, you and Violet had shared a secret episode. By then, I had come to terms with it. Writers are often sentimental. It was just a small incident during your travels, now long past. There seemed no reason for you two to cross paths again. But 5 years later, after Violet's unexpected death, your wife appeared at her funeral. Could such a coincidence really happen? Who would have informed her? Was Violet's death somehow related to you? This confused me terribly. It just so happened that the National Day holiday came, and I returned to my hometown to search for answers. I stayed for a week, meeting many classmates. Between locals and those home for the holiday, it was almost half the class. The class monitor even organized a reunion, so we could reminisce together. Everyone laughed and drank, recalling old times. I steered the conversation toward Violet. People discussed her openly but cautiously, since she was gone. Yet the more I heard, the more uneasy I felt, and the clearer my mind became. When we talked about Violet, we all knew which city she had moved to, which university she attended, what major she studied. But this information all came from her parents. It seemed no one had kept in direct contact with her in those years. Violet loved beauty. She had once said she wanted to take professional photos at university. Logically, there should have been a more recent photo of her. But why, was her memorial photo still from high school, 5 years earlier? With this doubt in mind, I discreetly probed my old classmates. Time rewound 5 years. Piece by piece, from different perspectives, I reconstructed the scandal that spread through the town after exams ended. And gradually, I uncovered a horrifying fact. After that incident, no one seemed to have seen Violet again. Everyone assumed she was too ashamed to face people, hiding herself away. I resented her, and no one sought her out. Shortly after the incident, her family quietly moved away at dawn, unnoticed. During the summer, everyone was busy with their own plans. Classmates didn't gather again, and once the summer ended, they left for college or work. After that scandal, Violet simply vanished. Even my last memory of her was that half-open door. Could she really disappear completely for 5 years? Something was definitely wrong. I wanted the truth. I suddenly became obsessed. Otherwise, I would never escape the nightmares of that door. Half a year after the funeral, they had already left town, settling elsewhere, occasionally returning each year. Through neighbors, I learned their current address and immediately went to visit. I met Violet's mother alone, invited her for a meal, and naturally brought up Violet. At first, she could talk a little about Violet's college life. But under more detailed questioning, she started avoiding the topic, her eyes flickering nervously, changing the subject several times. Most people's lies are easy to detect if you press hard enough. Under my relentless questioning, she finally broke down and told me the truth. The day after exams ended, Violet had told her mother that she was going to do something very brave. She said that before, she had always been with friends and was too shy to do it alone, but this time, she planned to go by herself. She had the same idea as I did. Her mother hadn't paid much attention, just told her to come back early. But Violet never came back. High school us were still too innocent. Just 2 months of knowing someone, and we dared to throw ourselves headfirst into love. We were drawn to Drake's appearance of being talented and well-read, but we ignored the fact that he was a stranger from out of town. You can know a person's face but not their heart. Drake seemed gentle and refined, but inside, he was twisted. When our date moved to his house, his true colors showed. On the day after the exams, Violet went along with Drake's adult games, and he killed her. Violet had already died back in 1998. When I learned the truth, I was stunned into silence, my mind a tangle of emotions. If I had pushed open that door back then, would Violet still be alive? And would I have died at Drake's hands too? I don't know the answer. All I know is that I'm still here, alive. Because of my caution and timidity, I never pushed open that door. I escaped the horror of uncertainty, brushed past death, and kept my life. What happened on that timeline ran parallel to mine, I could never know it fully. On that day after exams, Drake killed Violet. He could have gotten away with it quietly. After all, Violet had gone to his house secretly. Though her mother was informed, no one else knew the details. By chance, I discovered the affair and then spread the story. Everyone soon knew. This tied Drake and Violet together in the public eye, drawing all attention. Violet's father and brother stormed Drake's place, demanding answers. Drake had no way to deny it, so he confessed everything, and offered a price that was astronomical by the standards of a 1998 small town. Violet was dead. No money could bring her back, but it could at least settle matters. Her father and brother went in angrily, came out in silence, and eventually accepted Drake's plan. They decided to play along with the rumors. They pretended they were too ashamed to stay and quietly moved away, hiding the truth of Violet's disappearance. By the time the morning fog cleared, their house was empty. Who would have thought that the moving truck carried an entire family down the mountain? They left. Drake finished handling the body and left town as well. The scandal that had raged for days quietly ended. Around 2000, before the National Household Registration System was connected, it was easy to manipulate records in a new city. Violet's name vanished from existence. They started a new life in a new place. No one outside knew the details. They had a son. Everything seemed neatly resolved, but a hidden risk remained. Life is full of connections that aren't easily severed. Though they left the town, they couldn't completely cut ties. Their roots ran deep. They occasionally returned home, and relatives or old neighbors would come to visit. Neighbors would naturally ask about their children. At first, they made up stories, saying the daughter had gone to a distant university and rarely came home. They had to whisper, careful not to be overheard by new neighbors passing by. But lies are eventually exposed. Every time they returned as a family of 3 and Violet was absent, suspicions would rise. The key problem was this: Violet was biologically dead but not socially dead, especially in the town. They had to solve this completely to close the matter once and for all. So, in 2003, they hired a mentally unstable homeless woman, dressed her up, and brought her to the town. That year, during the SARS outbreak, wearing a mask wasn't unusual. The homeless woman went about openly with them, and the townspeople naturally assumed this masked woman was their daughter. Shortly after returning home, they drowned the woman in a water tank, then threw her shoes into the swift river, claiming their daughter had fallen in by accident. Neighbors helped retrieve the body for 3 days and nights. The woman's body had soaked in the tank the entire time. It swelled until the features were unrecognizable, and then, under the cover of darkness, they dumped it in a river bend where debris collected, only for it to be discovered the next day. This was followed by a funeral, marking Violet's social death. They didn't do this alone. They coordinated with Drake beforehand, using the famous horror writer's reputation as leverage. Drake's wife knew everything, which is why she appeared at the funeral. From the discovery of the fake body, to the funeral, to cremation, she ensured everything went perfectly. Once this second transaction was complete, the problem was fully resolved. No third step was needed, Violet was truly gone. Her cremated ashes marked the final closure. All who attended could verify it. Everything was airtight. Even if anyone wanted to retract their story later, there was no evidence. After all, ashes are just inorganic matter, they reveal nothing of the living. Now, Violet's mother has told me the truth. It doesn't matter, because I cannot verify or refute it. I only have this cruel story, unsure if it's true or false. She said, "We wronged Violet and we wronged that homeless woman. But we had no choice. Once we chose that path, we had to go through with it." Seeing her grief, my stomach churned. Before I left, she tried to comfort me, "Forget this. It's been too long, and it's not your concern. We all need to move on." But after that, I didn't escape the nightmares, I sank deeper. I kept returning to that day after exams, dragged by invisible hands to the half-open door. The day Violet died after exams, I was the only one who went to the scene. If I had acted differently, instead of quietly leaving, would she have had a chance to survive? I relived this hypothetical daily, tormented by nightmares. Of course, I wished it had nothing to do with me, that it could just pass. No matter if it was day or night, I couldn't stop myself from imagining, regretting, and then drowning in endless guilt. One morning, when I got up to wash my face, I suddenly saw Violet's face staring back at me from the mirror. I screamed and smashed it. Shards scattered across the floor, and my life felt just as shattered. I knew Violet couldn't rest in peace. All these years, she's been blaming me, for not saving her. But what can I do now? I don't even know where her real body is. I can't stand in front of her grave and say, "I'm sorry." Wait, what did I just think of? Violet's real body. That's when it hit me, maybe things weren't as perfectly resolved as everyone believed. The ashes in the grave might have settled, and everyone assumed they belonged to Violet. But, if I could find her real body, prove that this was Violet too, then the lie would crack open. Even if the proof would be hard, modern forensics could handle it. The real question was, where is her body? Drake's old two-story rental had been demolished and rebuilt. No news ever came out about a body being found during construction. The town wasn't big, but it wasn't small either. Mountains, rivers, finding her would be like searching for a needle in an ocean. Only Drake knew where she was. I finally understood what I could do. My life was already a mess, I needed to do something. Back then, I was just a bystander, unknowingly tangled in my friend's murder. My small actions made things worse, and the ripples still reached me today. Now that I knew part of the truth, I couldn't just turn away. If I didn't chase the full truth, Violet would never let me go. Getting Drake to reveal where the body was would be nearly impossible. This wasn't something he could just talk about. But I had to try, one step at a time. In 2004, I quit my job and moved to the city where Drake lived. After college, I'd always drifted from place to place, no roots, no friends, no love. It didn't matter where I went. Luckily, my degree was in demand, so I quickly found flexible work, leaving me time for my real work. It took half a month to track Drake down. First, I found his publishing house through public records. Then I waited outside for days until I saw him. I followed him and discovered where he lived, an apartment in a tall building. I rented a room across the street and bought a high-powered telescope. I set it up by my window, aimed right at his home. Every bit of my free time went into observing Drake, looking for an opening, a weakness. I even dug through his garbage. After 2 months of watching, I learned that Drake suffered from severe psychological problems. He and his wife weren't just married, they had a doctor-patient relationship. Normally, a psychologist and their patient can't fall in love. So, to avoid suspicion, they moved the therapy sessions into their home. Every few days, they'd sit face to face, talking, therapy sessions that often involved revisiting the past. That meant Drake trusted his wife completely. She knew everything about him, she'd even helped him cover up Violet's death. I was certain the information I wanted would come up during those therapy talks. The problem was, how could I hear what they said? Spying from afar wouldn't work forever. I needed to get closer. I'd crossed paths with Drake before, but I wasn't sure if he remembered me. I couldn't risk it. So I decided to start with his wife, Luna. After 2 months of observation, I'd learned Luna's habits and hobbies by heart. She went to yoga 3 times a week, always on the same days. She also loved art exhibits, especially embroidery shows. There'd been one on freestyle stitching that lasted a month. She went several times. Yoga and exhibitions, those were her private escapes. She always went alone. Perfect entry points. I spent weeks learning yoga and reading exhibition catalogs. I prepared everything down to the smallest detail. Then I built a new version of myself, someone like Luna. A cultured, independent woman with a respectable job, an image I could actually sustain. I joined the same yoga studio she did. Soon, we became familiar faces to each other. Then, by chance, I ran into her at an exhibition. I used my prepared knowledge to chat confidently, and she took notice. After that, she began talking to me more in yoga class. We chatted about the exhibits, and our connection grew naturally. Soon, Luna started inviting me to more shows. I always prepared ahead, researching each artist, so I could keep up effortlessly in conversation. She began to see me as a kindred spirit. Before long, we were close friends, sharing stories, meals, shopping trips, everything. Funny thing is, sometimes I forgot my real purpose. Luna reminded me so much of Violet. Maybe Drake always loved that kind of woman. And maybe I just always liked that kind of friend. After a year of friendship, I gave Luna a beautiful embroidered wall art piece as a gift. It could also light up like a soft wall lamp. She adored embroidery and accepted it happily, hanging it up that same day. Just like the wooden Great Seal that Soviet students once gifted to the U.S. ambassador in 1945, my embroidered art was also a symbol of false friendship. Because I had modified it. The battery didn't just power the lamp. It powered something else hidden inside the frame. I wanted to know everything. As I read through the second letter, I teetered on the edge of madness several times, yet I forced myself to continue. But by the time I reached this part, I could no longer hold back. I grabbed the ashtray beside me and hurled it at the embroidered wall art. Luna, busy in the kitchen, rushed over at the crash, and saw me tearing the embroidery to pieces. "What are you doing?" she asked. "What are you doing?" I shot back. "Why didn't you go out today? Why have you been stuck in the kitchen all day?" "I told you. I had a friend coming over, so I was making some food for her," she replied. "Really? The friend who sent this painting?" The embroidery fell apart completely in my hands, and I found the hidden bug inside. Luna went silent. This embroidery had hung in my home since 2005, 3 years. For 3 years, every secret I had confessed in therapy had been secretly listened to by someone else. I crushed the bug underfoot and tossed it out the window, my mind buzzing, thoughts in chaos. I was angry, scared, and unsure what to do next. I paced back and forth twice before finally sitting down to continue reading the letter. Reader's letter. I want to know the whole truth. The day after the exam, Drake killed Violet. He made an agreement with his family to cover it up. They moved away, and Drake disposed of the body. Everything was so neatly arranged that the police had no need to get involved. If I could find the real body, I could reopen the case, involve the authorities, give Violet justice, and finally find peace for myself. While listening in on Drake's therapy sessions, I searched for clues about the body, and along the way, I learned even more secrets. In the 1990s, Drake didn't just commit this one crime, he was a repeat offender. To become a master of horror writing, he transformed himself into a living monster. While traveling, he committed crimes repeatedly to fuel his inspiration. Back then, with flexible travel and limited forensic technology, he escaped the law every time. Later, he stopped. He became a renowned horror writer, but the evil he had committed haunted him. It disrupted his life, forcing him to undergo regular therapy. He confessed everything in detail to Luna. Over time, with her help, he desensitized and forgot the worst of it. Every confession erased a little more from his memory. Years later, he forgot most of the details and could sleep peacefully. I had been listening for 3 years and knew an even more complete truth. I had reconstructed the scandal from different perspectives: high school friends, Violet's mother, thinking I knew everything. But seeing it from Drake's perspective shattered every assumption I had made. That night in my rented room, I removed the earpiece and stared at the ceiling for a long time, paralyzed. I could only cry. I hugged my knees, curled up under the blankets, shivering and sobbing all night. The truth is brutal. The day after the exam, Violet went to Drake's house. No one ever saw her again. I stood before that half-open door. I was the last one there. Did I see Violet? No. I never opened that door. Though in my dreams I had opened it countless times, that day I didn't. I left. I've always been shy, reserved, cautious. I never pressed forward, never pursued the truth. Others might have thought I was dignified, but I was just scared. I was so timid, so careful, that the moment I sensed the slightest hint of danger, I would step back, then retreat 99 more steps. I retreated, I rationalized, I let fear dictate my actions. It took 10 years for me to finally break that mindset and understand what really happened behind that door I never opened. That day, Violet went to Drake's house alone. Drake welcomed her, inviting her upstairs to his study, supposedly to read novels. But behind that door, there were no books. Only a bed, and knives, axes, and other weapons. Violet stepped through the door, and what awaited her was unspeakable horror. The date we had anticipated for a month was actually a devil's trap. Drake had planned to kill us all along. Violet arrived a day early, and he struck first. He didn't care for a young girl's innocent confession. He raped Violet and stabbed her more than 20 times. After the attack, he tossed the knife aside and watched her convulse, crawling toward the door. He didn't stop her. It was her last flicker of survival instinct, a final, desperate effort. After 20+ stabs, she was already doomed. Dragging herself through the blood, all she could think of was leaving that terrible room. The door was ajar, a sliver of hope. She reached for it. Through the crack, she saw me ascending the stairs. In that moment, she became fully aware. She wanted to warn me, "Don't come." But she also feared alarming Drake. My friend Violet, she knew me well. She knew I was timid, cautious. She knew I would stop at the slightest hint of danger. In her final moments, she used all her strength to protect me. She called Drake's name, not to him, but to me. Bloodied hands stretched forward, she closed that door herself. Violet and I had grown up together. We shared laughter, jealousy, trust, suspicion. Even on her last day, we both had our own thoughts, schemes. But at the very end, Violet protected me. She destroyed her own life to save me, turning unimaginable horror into an act of silent sacrifice. And I never knew. I spent a month tarnishing her memory, 5 years resenting her, another 5 years trying to escape her. 10 years later, I finally opened that door, not physically, but mentally, and realized the truth: Violet, bright and outgoing though she was, wasn't careless or naive. I had assumed too much, blindly. She knew me. I didn't believe her. Now, she punishes me, forcing me to face the truth, dooming me to a lifetime of unrest. I will never escape her, never escape the pain and regret, and I will forever face the cowardice and foolishness within myself. This is the most enduring suffering imaginable. The story ends here, but a life lived to atone has only just begun. I write this long letter with a trembling heart, sharing my experiences, and I ask you. Will you bear this eternal pain with me? I cannot take violent revenge. I do not have the courage to kill or burn. Nor would I destroy your talent. All I can do is make arrangements for the lives of the three of us. Drake, for a writer, losing inspiration is unbearable, isn't it? But as your loyal reader, I cannot accept it. Please continue writing. If one day I discover you cannot write anymore, I will release the therapy recordings to the media. Remember, the Violet case didn't involve the police, but other victims were found, cases remain unresolved. I love your novels, please continue, no matter what. I will keep watching, hoping you work diligently every day. Luna, your wife, loved you enough, as your therapist, to hear your monstrous crimes, yet never reported you, and married you. I can't understand it, but she is my friend. I treasure our friendship. I want it to last forever, so I can find solace amid the pain. Even though I've revealed everything, she can still act as a proper friend. If she cannot, I will make everything public. Starting today, I will schedule daily emails to be sent the next day. If I die, by accident or otherwise, these messages will automatically go to the media. I will adjust them daily, reminding myself of the one regret that haunts my life. Like Sisyphus, I will push this boulder endlessly. If you agree, please place this letter inside a signed copy of your novel and return it to me. Wishing you well. Your loyal reader. December 14, 2008. Epilogue. The first time I visited a friend's house, I was nervous. Fortunately, they were warm and welcoming. "Honey, this is Claire, my friend from the exhibitions," Luna said, her smile polite but stiff. "I've heard a lot about you," Drake said, greeting me and handing over a signed novel, with an envelope inside. We had read this book before and loved it. So we talked about literature. The scene felt familiar, but 10 years had passed, and our hearts had changed. Soon it was dinner. We enjoyed the food, fine wine, laughter, clinking glasses. I felt the warm rush of wine, eyes half closed, gazing at my two friends. My mind drifted, carried back a month ago. A month ago, I returned to my hometown alone and climbed a mountain. At the summit, the forest waves stretched like an endless sea, the wind howled and whistled. I stood at the highest point, looked at the valleys and peaks, and shouted. "Violet! I'm sorry. I only hoped this long overdue apology could reach the ears of the 18-year-old girl, abandoned and shattered, somewhere in those hills."